So if anybody who knows me, but and by the way, for those who don't, I'm one of the founding partners at Spero Ventures. And we invest in the things that make life worth living across three core areas: well-being, work and purpose, human connection. And in our human connection investment focus area, we published a 3-blog post. My colleagues who are here, Priya, Sarah, and Stephen, wrote up a 3-blog post on product-led communities. So that hopefully, if Stephen's on the line, he can share that in the chat. It talks about the types of startups and founders who are working on these startups that we're excited about backing, who have an existing product or service, and the community layer makes the experience 10 times better. And hopefully sort of the community is aligned around sort of this long-term goal of improvement in some way. So whether that's upskilling, whether that's physical or mental health, or other areas, that's been our focus. And we're a single LP firm, so we're backed by Pyramidere, and our focus is to invest in the next great generational companies that have both purpose and can scale to become billion-dollar companies. And for those who are joining, not surprising, there is the QR code, and all you need to do is hold up your phone, scan the QR code with your camera app, and then that will take you to the poll. And the first poll question is right here: when you think of community, what word comes to mind? And it'll put together a word cloud for us. So Sunny, what's surprising here for you? Anything that you're saying that's...
I'm so glad that somebody said love. I think that is core to a community. It's surprising in a really great way. I mean, connection for sure. I put trust. I mean, communities are built on trust, but I think you're getting into the real important stuff when you talk about love. That's pretty interesting. I like that a lot. Shared interest for sure. Stephen again. When you think community, you think Stephen. Stephen is the poster.
Stephen is our investor here at Spero, who's written multiple blog posts about community, and he's interviewed many founders and community leaders, some who are here with us today and many who aren't, around the secret sauce around community. So Stephen, if you're online already, you should share some of your blog writing in the chat. Anything else, Sunny, before we move on to the next question?
Well, I think Stephen was going to add a little bit about community. Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, feel free to give me some claps, because the Medium algorithm apparently requires 1,000 claps to get noticed. So, but I'm always happy to jam on community. It's one of my favorite passion areas where we invest. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, I see only 16 people of 31 who have joined us have activated the poll. So please do scan the QR code. And we have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, definitely scan the QR code. It's really easy.
Take a screenshot of this, Sunny, but this is a great...
Okay, well, give me a second. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to give everyone else a second to, if your iPhone, this cool little trick, you just swipe down, you have that awesome little scanner right there. You can scan that QR code. It works really, really well. So I'm highly encouraging you to do it and add some more here before I take this picture. Who's in? Okay. That's it. That's all I get. All right.
Take a screenshot too. Okay, awesome.
I got it.
So that's a great first poll question. All right, the next one here. What is an example of a great community? So go ahead and type in your thoughts. Ooh, Tesla, I like that.
that is a good community.
And Mark isn't even here. So Mark is one of our partners at Spero, who co-founded Tesla. I think that there's a lot of love and a huge community there for sure. Sonny, what do you notice?
I'm watching. Church. That's interesting. That is, well. Here's what I noticed about this question. This is a hot question. because what does great even mean? So if I write Facebook, some people might think, oh my God, it's so terrible. But man, there's so many great communities on Facebook. Oh, good. Somebody wrote that, Facebook groups. Yeah. I mean, to me, this is all about, it's a very personal question. You know, what's great to one is not great to another. And that's the cool part about communities.
Yeah, I see.
The battery, that's
Peloton,
interesting.
The battery.
Yeah.
It's like the 1% community.
but again, that's to my point, right? That it's a cool community actually, but you know, it's a membership community. It's a different type of community. I have a good one. I'm going to do mine now.
Okay. Yeah, I see Peloton, Strava. Those are great community products. Alumni church, great. LGBTQ. Okay. So Stephen, I hope you're snapping a shot here. I'm going to move on after this. All right, cool. Lots of good ones. Awesome. All right, the last question. Okay, what is everyone's experience level in building and engaging your community of users? So want to see if we have a super experienced group here or like a newbie group. So you can see these poll results updating in real time. Ooh, like I think we have a pretty experienced group here. Okay, so who said that they have either a decent amount or high degree of experience? Jump in. It's a small group, so jump in. Sunny.
Well, no, someone else jump in.
Yeah,
there's other people did it. Someone else.
Feel free to unmute and just jump in.
Yeah.
David raised his hand. I saw him.
Yeah, I can't see because I'm screen sharing. So, David, what's your experience?
I owned a clothing shop in Israel, and I built a community of 10,000 shoppers that used to receive the text messages every time I received a shipment, and then the night of shipment. Yeah, it just was fun because people used to post pictures of what they want me to import to Israel, and then I used to import the clothes, and 10,000 people showed up the day after, so it was fun.
Amazing. And welcome, David. For those who don't know David is the founder and CEO of Nana, the newest Spero company in the portfolio. I think the money just got wired like last week, this week. So,
not announced yet.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah. Everybody's under friend DA.
It's announced now.
Yay. we're thrilled. Okay. Anybody else? Maybe one or two more? What communities have you built? Anybody who has a decent amount of experience?
I'll go. Chris.
Oh,
okay,
go ahead.
Nicole, you go ahead.
Nicole, yeah, no, you have a great story, Nicole.
Yeah, hi. So I have a product line called Sash Bags, and I have built a community on Facebook of about 60,000 people that has supported me in raising about $2 million on Kickstarter just by word of mouth. And wow. Because they're just super excited wow. about the product, and they've created this community. Really, they're the ones that are spearheading it, and they actually call each other Sash Sisters, and they have in-person meetups. So there's tons of stories within this community of women who met online who are now real life friends because of this community that was created around a product. So it's really cool.
Amazing, great story. And then Christoph, you wanted to share?
Sure. My name is Christoph. I'm the founder and CEO at Hornet. We built the world's largest online LGBTQ community with 30 million users. So we're a bit later stage, so we post Series A and profitable and all over the world.
Awesome. And then the other Christoph, yes, there's R2.
I was like, I didn't volunteer, but I'll share. I didn't realize there was another Christoph on the line. It's not that common. But yeah, I've cheated a little bit. I've kind of inherited a lot of amazing communities from eBay to Vimeo and now Skillshare. So not growing it from zero to something hard, that's really the harder part. But I've inherited it and helped foster them.
And Christoph is the CPO of Skillshare, also a Spero company. So we're thrilled to have him here. Yay. All right. Okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce the first of our three speakers. So it'll be Ravi, who was the former CPO of Tinder and now an EIR at Reforge, one of the biggest sort of marketing and growth communities, a great community to be part of if you want to learn how to grow your startup. And he has a talk based on a blog post that he wrote, followed by my good friend, Matt Kaufman. Matt and I worked together. How many years ago, Matt? 10? I don't remember. At Oodle.
It was a long time ago.
A long time ago. Now the VP of product of Roblox. And then Priya, who I got the pleasure to get to know recently. She has a B2B community within FourKites, and she's going to share sort of their journey. And so with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and allow Ravi to take over and take it away, Ravi. Each of these speakers will have roughly 15 minutes. So I think their talks are around 10 minutes or so, and then we'll do 5 minutes of Q&A. So queue up your Q&A in either the chat or, it's a small group, so you can also just ask it live after their talks. And then 15 minutes roughly for each one, so.
Excellent. Nice to meet everyone. Can you guys see the slides okay?
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to talk about an interesting intersection of entertainment and community. I recently wrote a blog post for Reforge called The Entertainment Value Curve, explaining why TikTok is on fire and Quibi isn't. I think it's a really interesting use case because in this case, or an interesting strategy case, because in this case, you have as close to a product strategy A/B test as you can get in the real world. Both of these companies started with a goal of creating a new vision for video on mobile. And ultimately that vision for video was around the idea that mobile as a smaller device, as a more intimate device, the video on mobile needed to be snackable. And in one case, we've seen massive industry-changing success. And in another case, we haven't seen that. So why was that the case? What are some of the underlying factors that caused one model to be so successful and a different model to not work as well as anticipated, especially given how much money and talent and energy has gone into Quibi? So at the face of it, Quibi seems like the perfect formula. You have Jeffrey Katzenberg on one side, you have Meg Whitman on the other side. It's a marriage of tech and entertainment, unlike what we've seen before. And really the idea was to take Hollywood level quality production and build it into a snackable package. Quibi actually stands for quick bites. And so the thinking was that there was a lot of video on mobile. There's a lot of amateurs creating video on mobile. It was time to let the big boys do the work and get really great Hollywood quality content onto mobile. And as a result, change the shape of video on mobile and invent a new format in the process. But one of the things that was really important is that Quibi missed an important point. Snackable video is fun, not because it's quick, not because it fits onto a small screen. Snacks are fun because they're shareable. And so a defining feature of mobile isn't the fact that you have a small screen. It's not the fact that you can turn from vertical to horizontal. It's really the fact that people have with them an intimate device that has persistent connectivity. And what's changed is that Hollywood has mastered this kind of classic formula for entertainment creation. The idea was you get the best quality screenwriters and actors, and you create a story that has really high production value and really high entertainment value by taking the best in the world and using that talent to tell a story. That way of building entertainment worked in a version of the world where screens weren't interactive and connected. But on mobile, that equation has changed. Entertainment value is no longer just a product of production value. It's a product of both production value and social value. And so production value is similar to what it's always been. It's an objective measure of the quality of the content. And when you have better content, ideally it will do better. Social value adds a completely new axis to that equation. It's determined by the level of connection that a person has with the person who shared the content with them or the person that created the content. So in the past, production value was the key thing that drove interest in entertainment. All things being equal, higher production value content would do better than lower production value content. but all things aren't equal anymore. And one of the things that's changed that's really important is that people enjoy content differently today based on who is creating it and sharing it. And as a result, you have this interesting continuum, which we're calling the entertainment value curve, where different products, different companies can strike different points of balance on this production value and social value curve. On one side, you have Snapchat, and your friend's baby face or your friend's gender switching lens or dog face is not going to win any Emmys, but it will make you laugh, and it will make you laugh because you have a very deep connection with the person who's creating the content. On the other side, you have Netflix, and Netflix is following a formula that's very similar to Hollywood. They've invested a significant amount of energy and talent into delivering content that is the best that you can find in a streaming platform. They haven't done a lot to productize social interaction in the product, but they do get some social interaction just by virtue of the fact that the content is so good that people want to talk about it. And so you have these two ends, one where on Snapchat, you've got lower production quality content that has higher social value. And on the other hand, you have Netflix, which has higher production quality content and where there's less connection with the content, but where it's interesting enough that you're willing to share it with your friends. And this idea of a continuum, it's really the minimum amount of production value and social value that you need to have in order to be in this zone where you have product market fit. If you're less than that, you get into a zone where you don't have product market fit, which is where Quibi is today. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why that is. There can also be some content that's not created equal, some content that does great from a production value standpoint. It does great from a social value standpoint. Everyone talks about it. Tiger King's a recent example of that. There's other examples as well. Recently with TikTok, it's this dog face example of the person on the skateboard drinking cranberry juice. Just everyone is talking about it. Everyone loves it. Everyone finds it really interesting. And so, ultimately the goal of these platforms is to strike kind of an average place within the spectrum of social value and production value, but also know that some content is going to punch above its weight and do even better. And as a result, exist in a space above this curve. So what happened with Quibi exactly? Why did it not attain a place on this curve and ultimately achieve product market fit? The reason is that Quibi added constraints that actually impacted its ability to deliver great production value content. They added format, length, and viewing constraints, which ultimately meant that the shows on Quibi, from a pure production value standpoint, are not as high quality as the shows on Netflix. In addition, they didn't counterbalance that with the community, with the social aspects that are really necessary to get mobile entertainment to work really well on a device that's with people all the time and that's highly connected. And so the product experience in Quibi is very much a solitary experience. You have very few signs of life anywhere within the product, very few signals that other people may be watching or talking about or enjoying a piece of content that you are watching within Quibi. In addition, they really hamstring their ability for people to share outside of the Quibi ecosystem. They initially prohibited the ability to take screenshots. And so any sort of virality that they might have had around interesting content that people wanted to talk about, they added a bunch of friction. In addition, they have this fantastic library of creators, or not library, but team of creators that are creating really interesting content. They've got great actors, great directors. Those people are creating conversations with their audiences on other platforms. They're doing that on Instagram. They're doing that on TikTok. Quibi did nothing to enable those conversations to actually happen within the product itself. And so ultimately, Quibi ended up with a platform that has lower production quality than Netflix, so it couldn't compete specifically on that vector, and it's less social than everything else on mobile. And as a result, it wasn't able to attain a point on that curve where it could have product market fit. And so, to the point of the discussion today, what Quibi really failed to do was take its snackable content and build a community around that content, either a community that could exist outside the app or a community that could exist within the app. TikTok, on the other hand, took an entirely different approach to this idea of mobile snackable video. The app looks and feels a lot like a social network. If you look at the right rail of Quibi, it's all about social interaction. You can see who created the video. You can follow that person. You can react to the video. You can leave a comment. You can share it. You can clone the video and take the music that's being used in the video and create your own video. So everything within this screen at the palm of a person's hand is around community. It's around social interaction. And they've positioned the particular video that you're looking at as a medium for social interaction, not something to be enjoyed in isolation. In addition, TikTok has done a number of things to break down the wall between the role of the viewer and the role of the creator. They've added a bunch of creative tools to make creating easier. They've also given a much more, they've democratized the idea of creation. They've given new creators much more of an ability to create content that gets distributed throughout the platform. I think someone was saying that every single video is guaranteed at least 100 views. They've even taken this one step further by encouraging mimicry. And so now as a creator, you don't even have to have an idea of something that you want to create. You can mimic something that someone else has created, put your own spin on it, and that significantly lowers that barrier further between the viewer and becoming a creator. And then lastly, it seems like a simple thing, but everything about this UI is designed to be social. And the idea that TikTok clips loop indefinitely or loop infinitely creates a UI where people can spend more time with a video that they like and decide what they want to do with it. They can decide, do I want to share this with a particular person? Do I want to react to it? Do I want to create my own take on it? Or do I just want to scroll to the next video? That's additional signal that TikTok uses to not only improve its recommendation algorithm, but also to improve the creative tools that they're making available. If you actually sit and you look at a TikTok and it loops for 3 or 4 more times, parts of the user interface will start to glow, encouraging you to take further action on that video and use that as a medium of social interaction with the people who might be interested in receiving that video, or with people who might be interested in creating their own take on a video. And ultimately, all of this comes together to define a compounding growth loop where today teens are actually spending 80 minutes a day on TikTok, parceled into 15 to 60-second increments. And so this loop is one that starts with creation. When people create content, that creates more content for people to consume. When people consume content, that creates the likelihood that they'll talk about the content or they'll mimic the content, which then drives more creation. And so this compounding loop every day creates an ever-expanding inventory of videos on TikTok, and for the people that come into view, creates more and more inventory for TikTok to pull the right TikTok from the millions of TikToks that have been created recently and serve that up to a viewer so that they can engage them socially within that content. And that's in stark contrast to the product that exists today for Quibi. One of the things that I concluded with in this article was a set of questions about what Quibi could do. Quibi has more talent, more capital than a lot of companies within the tech space. I don't think that their future is completely written, although it's getting to be more and more clear. As product leaders, there are very specific things that we could start to think about to reimagine Quibi. One of the things could be, how do you make content more shareable? Another thing might be, how do you make the app feel more alive? And I think one of the most important things is, how do you take that A-list community that Quibi has built of Hollywood level talent and spark a conversation between that community and the people that might get enjoyment from the content that they produce? So ultimately, I think the fundamental mistake that Quibi made was not thinking about itself as a community, was thinking about itself merely as an extension of a film studio working within a different format. Instead, Quibi really needs to think about itself first and foremost as a social network, and think about how the content fits within the social interaction between its audience. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions about this idea of how entertainment is changing and the social nature, the increasingly social nature of entertainment.
All right, so we're going to take 2 questions, just looking at the time. So just if you have a question, just unmute and ask.
I actually have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation, Ravi. When you were talking about social interactions, is there some like growth in terms of social interactions, but like not just sharing videos, but maybe more around like in the scientific community or around like debates, that actually just better interaction, I would say. Maybe better is not the right word, but you see what I mean, right? Like, is this growing at all? Like, I'm really not from that space, but like, I'm actually curious because I see a lot of growth in like TikTok and Facebook and like all these platforms, but I'm like, is there actually communities growing around like scientific topics or political topics or just other part of the interest graphs?
Yeah, there absolutely is. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities right now in community is that people have now understood pretty fluently how communities work. And so they understand the different mechanics, they understand reactions and commenting and following and things like that. And so other companies in very diverse spaces are now taking that understanding of the fundamental primitives of social media and applying it to other spaces. There's some good examples, like I think at one level, LinkedIn has moved in that direction. It's much more of a social community than it was in the past. There's another startup called Chlora, which is trying to create more of a community around people that are doing research within FDA trials. There's communities that exist around data science and machine learning and how to collaborate around that. There's communities that exist in the political field as well. I still think we're at the early stages of that, and that will continue to grow. But one of the things I'm most excited about is, given that people now understand these primitives of social media and community, there are definitely opportunities to reshape, not just these more entertainment-oriented use cases, but reshape some of the more serious use cases as well.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
All right, one more question.
Ravi, I have a quick question for you. Do you imagine any potential downsides to an app that might exist on the other side of the social sharing spectrum from a Netflix or a Quibi, meaning one that is entirely open without any limitations? Can you imagine any potential pitfalls there?
I think there's definitely pitfalls. I think as you move more from Netflix to the more open social networks like Snap and Facebook and Instagram, you have the problem that you have this massive inventory of content that you can serve to people. And it's not clear whether or not that content's always trustworthy. It's not clear if you continuously serve content to people that they engage with, whether or not you'll create filter bubbles. I think those are problems that Facebook is working through today, Twitter's working through. So it is definitely an issue. I think that, it's not likely the case that these open networks will go away. So the question is, how do you create the right policies, regulation, and internal mechanisms for those open communities so that they can become more regulated and make sure that the things that they're serving to people are trustworthy, are high quality, and are ultimately over the long term doing the right thing for the users that they're serving.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Jessica, go ahead and ask your question. I know you and Nate would kind of tied in terms of who beat who to the punch. So.
No problem. I think it was actually somewhat related. Thank you so much, Ravi, for this really cool analysis. What are your thoughts on why Netflix has not gone down the social route, given they have, I'm sure, like teams of people who thought about this? Is it basically what you just mentioned about then needing to filter and having this vast amount of content, or is it about branding? Like, what do you think are the reasons?
So I'm not sure specifically. My hunch is that it has to do with like what you're using the content for. So in Netflix's case, you're using it to lean back, to be entertained. And so the idea that the content is a medium for social interaction is less important for Netflix. It's definitely there. Like, people do talk about Netflix shows, but I think they may undermine their product market fit by trying to bring the social community into the app and create an experience that is actually at odds with what they're trying to do, which is more of this lean back entertainment experience, where TikTok is much more of a lean forward social experience where every piece of content that you see, the app is begging you to understand how you want to use that to communicate with other people. And so I think that those are two different use cases. Those are two different modes of thinking about entertainment and engaging with entertainment. So that's my hunch for why they haven't gone more social. I think it would undermine their product market fit. They are now, they've got Netflix parties, and so they're starting to experiment with it, but they're doing it in a way that's outside of that core experience, because I think that they're trying to keep that core experience pretty purely about how do we get people into the content, consuming the content, versus getting them to talk about it or share it or mimic it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ravi. Great talk and great slides. Awesome slides. All right, Matt, you're up.
Right, I will share my screen.
Ravi, you might need to stop.
Ravi, I think you have to stop sharing.
That sounds good. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think that will let me do it. All right. Let me get my screen set up here. You would think that Zoom would have made this easier by now, but they haven't. All right. My name is Matt. I am a VP Product and Operations, basically how we run the company at Roblox, which has a big community. Before this, I was also president and head of operations for Crunchbase, which also had a large community. I'm going to talk a little bit about Roblox here today, but if people have questions about either one of them, I am happy to answer. So let's get started. Sorry, just my screen again. So for anybody who's not familiar with Roblox, it's a gaming platform predominantly used by kids. And it's a platform where people create content. They create these experiences. Some are very much like a game. Some of them are more like hangout social experiences. And then other people come and enjoy that. And so it's your classic two-sided marketplace. We have content creators who are incentivized by more users. And the more content there is, the more users there is. And it's this virtuous circle that's been going on for quite some time now. Oops, back to my screen here. So if you look at Roblox today, there's about 150 million monthly users. About a third of those people, a third to a quarter of those people show up every day. We have 5 million developers. So these are people creating content. And there's about 10 million experiences on the platform. There's also tons of content for your avatar in these virtual worlds and stuff like that. So when we talk about developers, it's not just people building games, but it's also people building virtual items that they can buy and sell amongst each other. And one thing that's important to understand about Roblox is that it is a marketplace, and the people who are creating content can sell that content through a microtransaction system. We have our own virtual currency that powers everything. And because of that, there's actually big businesses that run on Roblox. So the question is who is this developer community? Our objective is to grow the community and get more and more people to create content, because we have this, virtual two-sided marketplace that we want to drive. And there are 5 million active developers and creators. We use the words interchangeably. Sometimes we use the word creator to talk about people who create virtual items for avatars, whereas developers are really building games. But it's super diverse out there. There's also people who build infrastructure and sell it to other developers to use in their games. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. The thing is, in that 5 million, there are kids, junior high, think, hey, you know what? I really want to experiment with building, I'm really into fashion. I'm going to build virtual clothing, and I'm going to become a designer. There's that. And then there's developers who are making tens of millions of dollars a year. And there's everything in between. And what's interesting is that most of the very successful developers on Roblox, the ones who are earning a lot of money, began as the kids experimenting with, wouldn't it be fun to drop a tank in the desert and see what it does when I drive the tank around? Or wouldn't it be fun to create this virtual outfit? I wonder if I could try and sell it, or maybe it's just fun. And so we have this community out there that is incredibly diverse, and we need to figure out what to do with them. And they're all part of this developer community that we have. So, excuse me. One of the things that we've done is we've really started thinking about the developer community as a funnel. And at the bottom of the funnel, you have what we call studios. So members of the community who, like, some of them now have staffs of like 50 to 100 people who are helping them build content. And then at the top of the funnel, you've got everybody, and you have people dabbling. And I should note that dabbling also includes summer camps. There's lots of summer camps that use Roblox for their curriculum. So we created this funnel here that starts with what we call active developers. And we're going to focus here on people who are creating experiences. But with an active developer, it's anybody who creates something that can get at least one other person to enjoy their content. Because if you get one other person to enjoy your content, you've kind of started getting that feedback loop. And then we have the experienced developers. And they're the ones who, from a metric standpoint, they're getting 500 other people to enjoy their content. And we say experienced because, like, at that point, you've probably learned scripting, you've learned how to use some of the APIs, and you kind of get what it takes to do this. And then you have advanced developers, and they're the ones who are starting to be like, you know what, like, yeah, like I could probably figure out how to make a little bit of money. Maybe I'm doing something new. I'm not just, copying what other people have done. And then you get into the part-time developers. And in the part-time developers, we start looking at people who are making $500 or more per month. And this is in real life, real world fiat currency. And with the part-time developers, our presumption is if you're making $500 or more a month, there's this nagging suspicion in the back of your head that, like, this could be my job. Like, if I'm making 500 now, like, I could probably make a lot more in the future. And then we get to sustainable developers. And these are where we actually get people who are like, this is their career. And this is starting to be like, oh, at $5,000 a month, yeah, I am going to quit my job. And I'm going to do this full time. And then you get to our top developers or our studios. And they're the ones who are like, actually, their problem is, how do I go build an entire team to help me build stuff? And you know what? That team probably comes from this community too, because if I want to hire experienced developers, I'm going to go back to the community in order to find it. So we've created this funnel, and then we think, excuse me, about what we're going to do to support people in the funnel. And so we've created lots of different programs. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about these programs that we've done. When we look at the active and experienced developers, this is where, there are millions, and, one-on-one connections with them is really hard. So you start with just a lot of material to help them help themselves. And so it's a lot of tutorials. We do a ton of stuff around enabling schools, summer camps, other things like that in order to be our extension to help build things or help teach people stuff. And then we do events. And we do events where we'll put challenges out in the community, and they're just fun. And there's just like saying like, hey, you know what? Like, here's this challenge, see if you can build something. We'll promote it on social media. We'll promote the people who build great stuff on social media. And it's just, it gets recognition, but it's a chance for the community to leverage the community and to attract more people into it. And as soon as you get experienced and we notice that there's a little bit of stuff going on there, and you get some recognition of what's going on. And a lot of times that recognition comes from other much more experienced developers in the community who tell us like, hey, here are people who are up and coming. We actually create our own accelerator and incubator program. So whatever you think about like venture and how they do accelerators and incubators, we do essentially the same thing. And we'll bring them to California, to San Mateo, at least pre-COVID. We would bring them here and we would say, here's our deal. You don't have to pay us. We will give you office space, and we will let you talk to everybody who's working at Roblox full time. If you've got a great idea that you're already working on, great, take it. If you're struggling to find an idea, we'll help you, and that's what we call incubation. And with that, a lot of what we're doing is actually we're forming social connections with these people in the community. Because one thing that's really hard with, building content on Roblox or building a game anywhere is it takes a lot of work. And a lot of times you have to collaborate and you have to find partners. And when you start with a community that's widely distributed, it's all over the place, and it's predominantly kids at the beginning, you have to find ways for people to make connections. So our accelerator and incubator programs are ways of doing that. So next, we have like our advanced developers and part-time developers. Here we start saying, okay, you know what? This is a real like B2B community. These are people who are starting to make money. There are people who are like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this is my real job. And you really have to change the way in which you treat them and the way you approach it. So what we do is we have formal processes for like reporting bugs and for getting help from our engineering staff. We also build incentive programs because a lot of times we want to like steer people towards the types of content or the types of activities we want them to do. Because a lot of times they don't know. It's like, I stumbled into this was fun, but I may not know that if I just changed a little bit of what I'm doing, I could be super successful. So we create incentive programs that help guide people towards, places where maybe they can accelerate a little bit more. We also hold conferences. And with conferences, it's about like forming those social connections. But in these conferences, we really do a fair amount of curating to get the right people there. And we'll invite people from all over the world. This summer was the first time we did it fully virtual. We're talking about really like spreading that around, which is actually really good for us because we have to support lots of different languages and other stuff like that, and just different, actually, it's hard to get somebody from like Indonesia to fly to San Mateo for a developer conference for Roblox. But if we can make them global and we make them all virtual, that really helps. So moving on, you get to like the bottom of the funnel. And here is where these are businesses that are live and they're running. And here's where we start moving into more of like, almost like a consulting business where we say, all right, you've already been really successful. You've gotten all of these people, but you know what? Like maybe we can help you with game design. The most interesting one we did was a game called Adopt Me. It is one of the top video games ever made in the world. It was built on Roblox, and about a year and a half ago, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was a small team of people who were kind of hobbyists. They were very talented. And we had them work with one of our game designers, and it turned into one of the top games in the world. And sometimes what it means is just like providing like real hands-on guidance. Like, I'm not going to give you a tutorial. I'm not going to make you watch a video. I'm actually going to sit down with you, and it's all free, and you're just part of the community, and we really want to help. But even when we do that, like one of the things that we've learned is that you have to find teams or individuals who are ready to accept the help. It's one thing to put a bunch of videos out there and hope that everybody clicks on it and stuff. But like at this stage, what you're really looking for is you're kind of like a venture firm. You're looking for a team that's ready to accept a little bit of guidance and really open to like different ideas and like ready to accelerate. And so we do that through this consulting. We also help them with operating their game. These types of games and experiences, it's not where you publish it one day and then you sit back for a month or so and you watch everything take off. You're actually running it every day. You're holding events, you're changing the content, you're operating on social media, you're doing all of that stuff. And again, this is something where like it's very hard to get that across in a tutorial or an instruction manual. You really need somebody who's going to sit down with you and just mentor you on a day-to-day basis. So we provide that. And we also start really getting into advanced analytics where we will provide and pay for super sophisticated analytics for them to help them really understand what's going on. And again, like, we'll pay for that and we'll set everything up for them and all, because if they can understand more about their audience, they will build better content, and obviously that will help us. Back to my screen here. One other thing that we do think a lot about is when you're building these global communities, a lot of times in these B2B situations, you're looking at people who are running businesses, and you're talking about like how many people they employ and all of these things like that. One of the sort of a revelation for us over the last couple of years is to start getting into what we call GDP adjusted measures of how well they're doing. And when we look at that, and it was eye-opening, because what we found was there were a lot of people who were creating content on the platform who, like from a GDP adjusted income perspective, they were already building studios. They were already hiring a lot of people. And sometimes when we're sitting here in California, we're thinking about cost of living here and whatnot, we forget about that. And it has changed our view of where we run programs, because on the platform, it's a lot easier to get somebody to like a GDP adjusted $100,000 a year if they're in the Philippines or if they're in Indonesia. And so then you start thinking about like, well, okay, how do you tailor programs? How do you tailor content that we create to try and reach markets where individuals can become successful much more quickly, and they can start building out these studios and they can create much richer content. So you start taking a very global view in like how you manage these things. I think that was all I've got, but I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, let's take 2 or 3.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much for that. One of the commonalities I always see with community is how high touch it is. And very high touch, especially when it goes to the most lucrative kind of creators. But then if you flip it, what do you do about the low quality content? How do you handle that?
I mean, low quality content that shows up on the platform?
Yeah.
You manage that through search and discovery, right? Like, we have discovery systems and recommendation systems and whatnot that, like, for the average user, they're going to get recommended like the highest quality content. But something to remember in managing this is that most of our top developers began as kids, and it's really interesting because this, is very much a business at the high end. At the low end, you think about ROI for developers. And I say low end is like the novice developers. Their ROI is doing something that their friend experiences. Like, that is the aha moment. It's like, I created something, my friend saw it, and they said it was cool. And when you talk about the 10,000 hours notion to develop expertise and all of that stuff, our 10,000 hours happens amongst friends. So while we, for the average user, and we have lots more, consumers than we have creators, for the average consumer, we do push the highest quality content, but you can't forget about people who are just starting off and just learning, because chances are they're sitting in a classroom right next to each other and they're chatting about it, and this is what's fun for them.
Thank you.
Matt, I have a question. This is Mario. I have a question.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about, the different benefits for creators and developers within the community, but you didn't really talk about how Roblox got started. Like, what aspect of the community did they start first? I'm curious, since there's so much going on, where did they start to be able to build and add on those additional features later?
Yeah, actually, Roblox is hyper iterative. It's been around for 16 years. And the first community, there was no monetization, and there was all the creators were players as well. And it began with people like kids who basically just wanted to share stuff with their friends. It was very much a sharing thing. And over time, the tools became more sophisticated. People have started investing a lot more and got much more talented, and monetization was introduced. And when monetization was introduced, that's when you really started seeing the spread between more consumers and the consumer to creator ratio. That's where it started to diverge. Because at that point, you had creators really investing enough time to make something amazing, and that was attracting a lot more users. One of the things, I've been thinking a lot about lately, just in product, is and like you look at some of these businesses that have grown over time, it's a lot like cooking, right? Like everybody can agree on the raw ingredients and like it totally makes sense. But the way in which you mix them together and the amount of time that you let it kind of bake and sit matters a whole lot. And I think, Roblox was very fortunate in being able to take a very long view on the community and just let it grow. So at the time when Roblox really took off, the top developers had already been playing around with Roblox probably for 7 to 10 years. And that, it's hard to like when you think about like how do you recreate that, it's a challenge because a 7 to 10 year runway to really build that community is a pretty long time. But it's what happened. It's the answer.
Gabe raised his hand. So Gabe, go ahead and ask your question and then we got to move on. I think you got to go on unmute.
How about that?
Okay, perfect.
Cool. Riffing on the monetization stuff, I know that if you monetize stuff and it's too little of a reward, it starts feeling like it's de-incentivizing. Like I wanted to share this with my friend and you're offering me 3 cents. Like,
yeah.
Is there a line where you basically don't monetize at all, or how are you managing that sort of de-incentivization part of it?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. So, so the way you make money on Roblox is through microtransactions. At least that's how it's traditionally been. You create something in your game, you say, hey, you want to go to the next level, you need to pay some number of Robux, which is the currency, you get to the next level, or we give our developers a cut of that transaction. One of the things that we realized was that developers were, before you could get good at monetization, you had to get good at creating content. And you had this problem where you would be like talking to developers and they'd be like just slaving over creating content and they wouldn't have that reward mechanism of earning any money. And if they started trying to get into like into monetizing too soon, they wouldn't have the content that really worked. And so it's this chicken and egg problem. So what we did was we created something called engagement-based payouts. And we basically said, we have a whole subscription engine. We're going to take our subscription revenue and we're basically going to divide it up pro rata amongst where people spend time in games. So if you have a game, you have no monetization mechanisms in the game, don't worry about it. We'll just pay you based on people spending time there. It's in theory similar to how Spotify pays musicians. So we did that. And one of the things we did is we said, you know what, like, we're just going to pay everybody. If you get money, if you get 1 Robux, which is about a penny, we're just going to give it to you. And part of the reason we did that is because we know that a lot of developers who are not making a ton of money, they take that virtual currency and they just spend it back in the game. So we know that, like, if we send it out there, they're just going to spend it back. What we didn't realize was the social media impact of it. When suddenly, like, Twitter would light up with these kids who would be like, I just earned $1 on Robux. They wouldn't even say how much they earned. It's just like, I just earned money. Like, I'm actually creating content. People are paying me for my content. And there was this huge social reward system happening there where people felt like, wow, like I'm being recognized and like I'm getting something back. And even if they were just going to go spend that money right back on the platform. So we actually found that it was a huge incentive to kind of spread the word about what was going on. And we didn't see issues where people were frustrated.
Thanks.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Sure.
Great talk. And I have all 3 kids of mine who are 3 of the 150 million monthly active users. Numbers that
Thank you.
And founder will be jealous of. So awesome. Okay. So Priya, take it away.
Awesome. Let me share my screen here. Excellent. Can everyone see it? Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Priya Rajagopalan. So I'm the Chief Product Officer of a company called FourKites. And so from gaming to freight. So who is FourKites? So we are in the business of supply chain visibility. So if you think about, a Pokemon toy, right, that I might buy on Amazon for my kid. Well, now Amazon has gotten so good that you literally will receive updates, right, which say, hey, this package is now 4 stops away, 3 stops away. So it gets as granular as you can possibly imagine it. And yet, if you think about some of the companies represented here, right, their transportation spends, literally annual transportation spend is in the billions of dollars. And yet surprisingly, so if I'm Procter & Gamble and I'm sending a 500,000 order of freight to say Walmart, surprisingly, the best that usually you can do for Walmart is to say, hey, I'm going to get there on, November 1st, and that's about it, right? That's about the granularity that the industry is used to today. And so that is pretty much par for the course. And so that was the vision with which FourKites was founded. So we are certainly the youngest company represented here today, and also the youngest community. So the company is just under 6 years old. We were founded late 2014, and we're a Series C startup. So Bain Capital is our BCV, Bain Capital Ventures is our largest investor. We've grown fairly quickly. I joined the company in 2016. We were about 30 people, so we've grown fairly quickly. And we have, you can see some numbers there, but the most important thing to remember is just that our shippers, the community, and when I refer to shippers, I'm talking really about transportation and warehousing professionals that work at these types of companies, right? Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Land O'Lakes, Unilever. We have very heavy presence in CPG and food. And also in some of the more industrial firms like Caterpillar, Ingersoll Rand, and so on. But many of these are common shippers and receivers, right? Meaning, if you're Meyer, your top 20 suppliers are going to be the guys you see here, and they're all represented on the FourKites community. And so when we set out to create this community, this is important to remember when you think about, when I was just listening to the 2 presentations earlier, right? And these are not, developers or even folks necessarily that are used to engaging in community. So these are supply chain professionals. Most of them spend most of their time either in the warehouse or just literally talking to carriers, right? They're focused on transportation. And so I think internally, it was a bit of a gamble, right? There was quite a bit of skepticism around, can we actually engage this community? Will they take the time to engage with each other and with FourKites? And so we launched the community in September 2019. I'm happy to say, sort of fast forwarding to the end, that the community has certainly blown away our expectations, just in terms of the engagement, in terms of just how actively they've been participating, right? They've been soliciting each other to join the community. And so there's a number of positive things that have resulted thanks to that. So it's young, it's just exactly about a year old at this point. Our primary goals were that we wanted to get the community talking to each other, to be able to supply chain. There's no such thing as 100% visibility when it comes to supply chain. And so we wanted shippers to be able to share, importantly, share ideas with each other of what they had done, different ways to get around some of the thorniest problems in supply chain. And obviously, we were hoping also to have a more scalable process to gather and systematically prioritize customer feedback. So those were the objectives with which we launched the community. And the way I've structured the rest of the presentation is simply because, a year ago this was, or 15 months ago this was me. And so I don't know how many of you are in the audience are perhaps looking to start your own community or certainly scale it up, especially if you're on the B2B side. I've structured it in terms of my learnings, right, and the things that I hope might be beneficial. So there were five ways really, and so what I've done is to synthesize that into the top 5 things that we did. So my recommendations would be, number 1, start with a dedicated leader, and I'll talk about why that's important. Second, pick the right technology for your community. Third, again, these are all obviously B2B centric, but start small, identify your champions. We discovered, surprisingly, this was one of our surprises, gamification does work. people, our customers especially, we also discovered love polls. So we have this concept of Friday polls, which has gone down very well. And finally, measurement is key. So I'll speak briefly to each of these, right? So the first one, Megan Eitoven is actually on this call. So she is my product leader, and we literally created a rec and hired her to run the community. She came to us with experience of having built a community. And I think this has been a big part of why we were successful, right? Unlike everyone else on my team who is perhaps spread 10 different ways, right? Megan was someone that we did focus to just deliver on this. And Megan's incentives are, again, very closely aligned with the community success metrics that we were shooting for. And then, in my team of 40 product managers and designers, Megan does report to me. And the reason for that, again, was we wanted to make sure that it stayed elevated within the org. So I think, and I start here because that is really the most important piece in my view, and a big part of why we were successful. Second, the right technology. For us, it was important to have the common tool for our KBN community. And so we looked at a bunch of different vendors. We did a pretty robust evaluation. We picked Salesforce, and there's lots of reasons. But importantly, you can see a screenshot of the app here. One of the things that we did was to embed it right here within the application itself. And so right from within the FourKites experience, at any point, you can launch the community. And we think that again, has made a difference for us. Number three, right, we started small. We also started early. So fundamentally, it, of course, all begins with customer intimacy. And so this is, we now have maybe about 380 shippers on the platform, but they do feel part of a community, and we had some very engaged customers. So we started with about 20 to 30 of the most tech-forward customer champions, because again, our community is not based on developers or product managers, or folks that necessarily are the most, let's just say, tech savvy. And so it was pretty important for us to identify those just to get the momentum going. And when you think about the number, you need at least that number in order to make sure that if someone tosses an idea out, there'll be enough people that will pick up and run with it. And that's how we wanted to get it going. We have an annual customer conference, Visibility, which happens every year, or certainly for the last 3 years. We're young. And so, at our customer conference, by the time we got to the customer conference in just about a month, we were a little delayed with launch, but we had just about a month to go, and we had over 100 ideas by that time. This was last year, so the conference was actually not a virtual event, but we had these customer, these 20 to 30 folks identified as community champions. They had special badges, which they wore with pride, and they were talking up and evangelizing the community as well, which all helped with gaining momentum. Number four, one of the things we learned was that two things that really helped were, one was gamification. So we have various levels within the app, right? The more engagement you have, obviously, there is gamification around your status, right? And that's sort of tied to the product. And then the other thing that we did was around polling itself. So every Friday, our UX team posts a poll. We've discovered that our community loves polls, whether it is just commenting on a specific, literally like, hey, which logo should we pick for air freight, or if it's more, more deep feedback around the notifications format, or whatever the case may be. We do see engagement go up on Fridays. Folks love to participate in these polls. And then the most important piece, I would say, is that within our 7 product lines, every one of the team that works on those product lines has a 2-day SLA. So that is a pretty important one that they are expected to honor, to respond to the actual community ideas, because I'm a firm believer in this is where, communities go to die, right? You stop responding, and that's pretty much the beginning of the end. And so this is something that's really important. I'm personally very active in the community. And so our PM team, they are in fact measured on this. Finally, measurement. So we measure everything related to the community, right? Just to give you some sense, we are constantly looking at the number of new ideas, response times, right? Whichever ideas have gone by without an actual status change. Monthly active users, we define that as somebody that is logging into the community one or more times a week. And then we also, every quarter in the roadmap, we look at the community ideas and we prioritize them based on the top upvoted ones. I think our, just this last month, we had one that literally got over 300 points because so many customers, every customer, every upvote gets 10 points. And so we had so many customers upvoted, and we immediately within 24 hours changed the status to on roadmap, which made a big difference. And we've heard customers often comment on how they feel that the community is the fastest way to get their ideas on the roadmap. So that has itself formed a nice loop for us. And then this is something that we measure on, and we're very transparent. We report to the entire company. What is the percentage of community ideas that actually make it to our monthly roadmap? We report on that. Megan sends out an update once a month to the to the entire company. I'll show you just a couple of screenshots so you get an idea of what this looks like. These are the Friday polls that I was mentioning. Over here on the right is where customers can come in and vote on different polls. And then within each of these, there are subgroups as well. So if somebody is, for example, a huge ocean shipper, they can connect with other ocean shippers and share ideas. Each of these, we have specific sub-communities along with quarterly forums that we host where we preview our roadmap and get feedback. So there's a lot of interaction that and somebody can elect to join one or more of these groups. And so there's a lot of interaction that we have fostered around these communities. Here's an example of one of our more popular ideas, right? This is one of our customers. And then you can see that it gathered 180 points, right? It was upvoted. And then immediately we changed the status to on roadmap to reflect that this now goes to the top of our list. And we typically deliver it, depending on the complexity, usually within between 1 to 3 months. That is all I had. What questions can I answer?
This was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm inspired. Beautiful. So we have, when it comes to community, we have a crowd that is very engaged on Facebook. And I'm concerned a little bit about creating my own, like I want to build something in our own platform, our own app, the software for our service providers, our network. And I'm curious, what do you think when it comes to choosing the right technology? Should I just like double down on Facebook and maintain the network over there and the community over there, or should I really go ahead and try to migrate them into my own community and my own technology?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I don't know your application, right? Do you feel like new customers will easily find? It depends in a sense on your goals and how important it is, right? That be integrated with other pieces. Like for us, I think there were two things that were important, right? One was, if we kept it outside our application, we considered Slack as an example because I was inspired by Pendo. For those of you that use it, their community is super active on Pendo, but then very quickly I realized that transportation managers are not product managers. And so, keeping it anywhere outside of the application would lower my chances of, getting enough adoption. So that was important. The other piece is also just the knowledge base, right? It is a fairly deep application. And so just being able to quickly point them to just the right articles within the knowledge base and have that seamless interaction back and forth was also very important to us. So that's really the reason we kept it. But for you, if those are not considerations, then I think you could take advantage. For instance, if you're more concerned about just a product, gathering product input, running your surveys, you can do all of those things on pretty much any technology platform. And if Facebook is the easiest way to do it because you have enough momentum there, then you should just go for it.
Yeah. How does any of you have experience with building a community on one platform and then transition into a different one?
I don't.
No. Okay.
Looks like Christoph is nodding his head yes.
Yes, we did. We had used like ready products like Telligent and others, I can't remember. Then we migrated to WordPress, and now we are native in our own product. So it's been in 2 years increment. Always with some changes, but in the end of the day, I see community as a product. So I think it's part of our core product. It's not a marketing add-on. And it's deeply ingrained like in every aspect of our product. So if you have a badge, it will show everywhere in the product. So and it surfaces, because the surfacing of these badges then makes people click through back to, wait, how do I get a badge and so on. And if that lives outside your product, you kind of just don't have the same level of ingrainment, if you will. I don't know whether that's a word, but I think you know what I try to say.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Nicole, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I have experience in navigating Facebook communities over to our app that we built, which is a live shopping app, and then having our vendors that are selling on the platform do the same, and how we kind of set up some community standards so that even the other people that are bringing their communities are kind of forming one larger community. And I'd be happy to like chat more with you about it sometime.
I would definitely want to take you on that. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Please. Thank you.
Yeah, we had I sent out sort of both the faces directory and then sort of the groupings. The groupings have emails, so everybody will be able to get in touch with everybody else after the event. Okay, we have time for one more question. I know Gabe raised his hand, but Gabe, I know you already asked a question, so I don't know if anybody else has a burning question. Otherwise, we'll call on Gabe. Okay, Gabe, take it away.
Beautiful presentation. Question in terms of ideas that don't line up either with the company vision or just completely unfeasible of, do this thing that's completely impossible. How do you manage the just expectation setting and just making sure that those community members aren't like, well, you said you'd do it, but you're not doing it?
Oh, we have a pretty clear status. So the different status options, and so those would simply fall into not planned. So we just simply change the status there to not planned. We have a progressive status that starts from under consideration to, on roadmap. And then if it's just something that's completely not in scope, it's a great question. We just we just switch it to not planned. And
does that have consequences, or do people like, okay, I get it?
I think for the most part, I don't know that, I think for the most part, so it's interesting you say that, because I think our shipper community, so I talked about the shipper community, the newest community we've launched is the carrier community. So for us, when you think about it, we sell to shippers, that's our business model. We make money from the P&Gs or the Unilevers of the world, but we rely on carriers for the data, right, who are transporting the freight. And so we also launched a carrier community just maybe about 2 months back. Is it 2 months, Megan? Yeah, so about 2 months back. And there we can definitely see that people are not as understanding, right? We get all kinds of requests from, make sure that my driver's cell phone is always set to track always. And it's like we try and explain, hey, that's actually not something we can do, right? We can't physically mess with someone's device. And then, so they're always not so understanding. So I think with the carrier community, we're going to have to learn to find our way a little bit. They're always not as, but at least on the shipper side, it's pretty clear. And I think our plan there with the carrier community, what we plan to do is to have similarly roundtables just to educate them on the process and what we can and cannot do.